Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to MIT Airlines. This is FSX Training on Demand. Today, we're going to cover a topic in which I have struggled with a lot, and that is the transition from flying Boeing to flying Airbus. Now, I've been flying Boeing NGs for pretty much all of my flying career, I guess. And so, really, I had a lot of trouble trying to transition into Airbuses because of the many differences between them. However, despite all these differences, they're quite similar. This is the Delta A320 with CFM engines. As you can see here, it's pretty much like the sister aircraft of Boeing, although the fact that they're competing with each other to be the greatest and best aircraft for its medium-range airliners here. It's quite similar in its range and payload capabilities, other than the fact that the Boeing has a longer range than it, a few thousand miles. So I'm just going to jump right in with all the differences between them. So the biggest difference that I find is the throttle quadrant down here. So in a Boeing aircraft, the throttle is just push forward, push backward. I have all the engines running right now, so ignore all the sounds. I have in a Boeing aircraft, you just push it up and down. That controls your engines. Well, in a Airbus, you have detents. You have your idle detent, where it is right here. Let me get a good camera angle. So there's the idle detent, 0. You of course have your reverse detent. Not healthy to push your engines into reverse when you're not moving. You have the climb detent. It's gonna yell at me now. Takeoff config. You have your maximum continuous thrust. And finally, you have toga. And toga, as you know, in a Boeing aircraft, that is takeoff, go around. It just pushes your engines to their maximum for you to take off or go around, as the name implies. So, those are the different detents of an aircraft. So, say you want to take off. In a Boeing aircraft, you turn on your auto throttle. That's this switch in an Airbus. You turn on your auto throttle, everything's already set up. You have your speed bug set to your V2 settings. And you just hit the button, typically right there. Oh no, not right there. In a Boeing aircraft, it'd be right there. And auto throttle push it up for you, and you just go. Well, in an Airbus aircraft, you set up your auto throttle, you push them up into toga. And that's how you operate your engines to run toga, take off, go around. After you take off, you'll bring your engines back to climb. And the thing with the climb detent of an Airbus is that it is your definite auto throttle setting. So in a Boeing, you'd click on your auto throttle, you'd set up your speed bug, VNAV, LNAV, all that good stuff. And the auto throttle will physically move your throttle levers up and down to the power setting that it's running. Well, in an Airbus, you don't do that. In an Airbus, you set up everything, and it doesn't have LNAV and VNAV, so you set up your managed heading, which I'll get to in a second, and all that good stuff, and you want to run your auto throttle with speed settings, you need to set it into climb. And once it's in climb, you see ATHR, and that's auto throttle. And your auto throttle, when your thrust levers are in climb, will actually control your engines without moving the thrust levers. So, despite the fact that your thrust levers are in the climb detent, around 75% power there, your engines can be running at a different N1. They'll be running at a different power based on what your auto throttle setting. So, that's what you do there. Maximum continuous thrust is obviously maximum continuous thrust, and reverse is pretty self-explanatory. By the way, animations for reverse here are much different. Like in a Boeing, the back cowling will slide out. In an Airbus aircraft, it doesn't. These things here push out, and that's how you reverse your engines. Again, this is for the video's sake. Don't try and reverse your engines when you're just sitting there. Don't. It's bad. So that's one of the differences between Boeing and Airbus, the throttle quadrant. Along with the throttle quadrant is the way... Oh, actually, no. Before that, the autopilot. Because I told you that an Airbus doesn't have LNAV or VNAV, so how do you control it? Well, in an Airbus, you have different modes. In a Boeing, you would have your LNAV and VNAV, and you'd have command wheel steering or command or no autopilot at all. In a Airbus, you have managed or not managed. Yeah, managed or not managed. You can see here in all the phases, these are managed by default. Right? So managed basically is your LNAV and VNAV for your aircraft, speaking in Boeing terms. So for like VNAV speed, these things push in and pull out. So if you want to set up the autopilot to control your speed, you click it in, you'll see all these things go blank, and you'll see a dot here. That means that your autopilot's controlling your speed. Heading, again, the dot, you can pull it out. You'd control the heading, push it in, and it's basically like the LNAV for your aircraft. It'll make it follow the route. This is pretty much the same as well. You set up your cruising altitude or flight restrictions, and you see the dot next to the vertical speed. The vertical speed is then like the VNAV of a Boeing controlling your climbing and descent. And you just push this to level off, as it says right here. Push to level off. The EFIS is pretty much the same. I want this to go to inches of mercury, for we are in the US here, KORD out there. But it sticks in hectopascals. But yeah, that's that. ECAM is like a 777 aircraft. You have it here. You got your master caution, all this, clear and recall, etc. That's pretty much the same as a Boeing. So back to the engines here. There is another way to start your engines of Airbus. To start your engines in a Boeing, you would have to go. You need your APU running or an air start cart. You'd have to be bleeding air, pressurizing your pneumatic systems, and that bleed air would run your engines. Same thing here. As far as bleed air goes, you have to have your APU running, and you have to be bleeding air. However, in a Boeing, you must turn off your packs, or the air conditioning units. You need to turn off your packs in order for the engines to start, because the packs are sucking out your air. Well, in an Airbus, you can't turn off your packs. You can see pack flow here, low, norm, and high. Well, actually, no, I stand corrected. You can turn on your packs. That's just pack flow. Well, you don't turn off your packs of an Airbus. You don't. So, what you do is that when you go ahead and click this into the 3 ignition modes, crank, norm, and engine start, or ignition and start, click into ignition and start, you push up these starter switch here, and the aircraft will automatically turn off the packs for you. Now, as you're looking at here, there are no fuel levers. In a Boeing, once you get to 20 to 23% N2, you need to turn on the fuel. Well, you don't do that in an Airbus. You just push this up, and it's completely automated. You don't need to turn on the fuel. The aircraft will do that for you automatically. The entire start sequence is automatic, and that's pretty great if you don't want to do anything and you're lazy. Another big difference, of course, is the joystick. It's fly-by-wire system. Rudder pedals right here, all that. Okay, so another big difference is the flaps. In a Boeing, you have all these different flap settings, and I memorized it. Ready for this? You have 0, 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, 25, 30, and 40. So, you have all those different flap settings, and those actually are the degrees in which your flaps are extending. 5 is 5 degrees, typically used for takeoff. 30 and 40. 40 degrees and 30 degrees, typically used for landing. Well, if you look here, you have just these settings. You have your 0, 1, 2, 3, and full. Well, it doesn't mean that your flaps are extending 1 degree, full degrees. That's not even a degree setting. So, these actually indicate different preset conditions. So, for the Airbus A320, 0 is 0 degrees on all slats and flaps. 1 degree is 18 degrees on the slats and 10 degrees on the flaps when it's selected below 100 knots. For example, we're on the ground right now, and that's used for takeoff. However, in the air, it will not extend to 10. 2 is 22 degrees on the slats, 15 degrees on the flaps. 3 is 22 degrees on the slats, 20 degrees on the flaps, and full is 27 degrees on the slats and 35 degrees on the flaps. If we go to the flight control in here, okay, it doesn't show it. Never mind. Oh, it's up here. Yeah, see. So there's all the different degrees. The spoilers are pretty much the same, and all that. That's good. You can arm them or not arm them. all that. So that's another difference. The rudder trim and the trim system is really different on an Airbus. Not really different, but it has its differences. So, on a Boeing aircraft, to take off, you have like the green band range. Same thing here. However, in a Boeing, 0 on the trim is nose down full. However, 0 trim on an Airbus is nose level. So, when you be setting 5 point something something or 4 point something something, typically for takeoff in a Boeing 737 NG, I don't do that. 5 something 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 is nose up, like a lot for a Airbus. Instead, you have 0 or 0.8 up, or 0.8 down, or it's within this green band range here. So that's the difference of the trim. So if you see, oh, it's 0.8 on Airbus, you're like, oh my gosh, that's not a trim setting, you're gonna nosedive. That's the thing for Airbus. Same thing with rudder trim here, it's completely automated. There's no having to level it yourself. There's that big thing, if you have an engine go out on you and you have to do a one engine thing, in a Boeing you'd have to trim the rudder. In an Airbus it does that automatically for you, very helpful. You can just reset it right there. Manual gear extension, parking brake, all the same. Radios, all the same. Other than the fact that you do have the radio linked to the FMCs in Boeing terms. So it's not actually called an FMC on an Airbus. It's called the FMGS or something. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the FMGS. So you have the radio navigation. This is how you set up your nav radios. And the ADF radios. And the course and all that stuff, that's done here. But that's not a difference. This is for the 737. The 737 you don't have it. But on the 777 and other aircraft and Airbus, obviously, it's interfaced like that. Another difference is the ICAS system. It does have all the things that a typical Boeing would have, but you know, this is completely new for me because I'm used to flying the NG. We don't have that, so all that is just like that. Everything is pretty much the same for that, with minor, real subtle differences here and there. Gear lever, brakes, all that, they're all buttons here. A huge difference, though, that I really struggled with was the programming of the FMC, or the FMGS in Airbus terms. Everything is a heck of a lot different. For flight planning, you'd have to pick up your waypoint, stick it in, and everything. It's just heck of a lot of differences. I'm not going to explain all those differences here. You just try and fly an Airbus. Go Google it. There are a heck of a lot of differences. It's just really, really different in general. On the overhead, everything is operated on the dark cockpit concept, meaning if you see a light, oh no, a light, that's bad. So you just hit it and then you turn it off, which makes startup flows really easy. Like in a Boeing 737, the overhead panel hasn't changed much. In fact, it's barely changed at all, with some digital gauges here and there. All the switches, all the labels, all the everything, they stayed pretty much the same from back in its released in the mid-1900s. So, from the classic version. So, you look at a switch, and you can't immediately say, oh no, that's bad. Switch positions don't tell you anything about what's going on. However, in an Airbus, you see a white light, you know something's wrong. You see an orange light, you know something's wrong. And that makes it a lot easier to run flows and emergencies and all that. Here's your ADIRS, same flight controls. Because of the fly-by-wire, you actually have computers to control it, unlike the Boeing system in the 737, which is actually cable operated still, with hydraulics here and there, and everything. And the overhead is generally the same here. Everything there. And, well, those are the few differences between Airbus and Boeing. Really? So, thank you very much for watching, And we'll see you next time on MIT Airlines FSX Training on Demand.